Hello and welcome. Thank you for coming to the first webinar event for NABJ. I am your task force chair. My name is Joseph Ferguson, and I'll get out of the way and let our amazing panelists do their thing. But I first want to say I will drop the Facebook link in the chat and our email list link in the chat. So if you like what we're doing and you want to stay up to date, follow us on Facebook, join the email list. I promise I'm not going to blow up anyone's inbox. But with that, I'm going to pass it over to our wonderful moderator, Naja Parker. Naja, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Joseph. We appreciate that intro. Hello, everyone. Good evening. Thank you so much for spending a little time with us. Today, we're all going to talk about how to engage our online audiences. I'm very excited about the conversation we'll be having. Like Joseph mentioned, my name is Naja Parker, and I am the newsletter coach at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. I help our newsroom manage our more than 20 plus newsletters, and I also work on a team that helps us boost engagement with our newsletters. Last year, one of our goals was to grow our Black audience. So we did that by launching a newsletter that is titled Unapologetically ATL. And we've seen a lot of success with that. And our panelists have seen success with growing online audiences as well. So if you have questions throughout our conversation, please feel free to drop any questions you have in the Q&A box instead of the chat box, and we'll be sure to get to them towards the end of our discussion. So I won't delay us any further. Let's get to it. I would like for us to start with some brief introductions. So panelists, if you could go through and just tell us who you are and what you do, and then we'll get to the nitty gritty. Travell, let's start with you.
All righty. Hello, everyone. I'm Trevel Anderson. I use they, them pronouns. I am host of a couple podcasts, one of which is a daily news podcast called What a Day. I also co-host the Fanti podcast. And otherwise, I'm a freelance entertainment and culture journalist based in Los Angeles. I used to work at the LA Times, Out Magazine. And now I'm doing my own thing, working on a book or two. You know how it is. Oh, I guess I should also say I'm Region 4 Director on the National Board of NABJ and former president of the LA chapter.
Carlin, you next.
Hello, everyone. My name is Carlin Gay. Currently am the deputy editor over at The Sporting News. The Sporting News is one of the longest sports publisher in the world, started in 1886 here in the U.S. As a part of my role, I have an eye on everything global, which includes running and owning, operating NBA.com in partnership with, of course, the NBA. So we have NBA.com sites in 11 different markets around the world. So of the 20 international sites the NBA runs, we run more than half of them in specific markets. And with that, we have newsletters in those markets that are catered to those fans. So I come via a very global background, but also, a focus on kind of building an audience from the ground up through sports. And I'm based in Charlotte and also on the board here for CABJ locally as a VP of Digital.
And last but not least, Kamara.
Hello, everybody. It is a pleasure to see everybody. I wish I could see you guys, but looking down at my cell phone. My name is Kamara Daughtry. You probably know me from my Facebook group, Digital Career Opportunities Worldwide. My job is to help people. I help people get jobs from early career all the way up to the senior level. So I'm also a social media specialist at Sinclair Broadcast Group. That's on their corporate team. So I oversee over 17 stations. So that is a little bit about me.
Kamara, I'm going to keep the spotlight on you. I want you to tell us more about your Facebook group. I know it started out as a hobby for you, but in those beginning stages, what problem were you trying to solve with your Facebook group?
Originally, when I started, I was an Emma Bowen Foundation Fellow. So CBS paid for me for 3 years, only, by grace, to stay at my local CBS affiliate. And I know a lot of people didn't get that opportunity. So it really started off with, I went to a HBCU Miles College, and a lot of students I mean, they had never even been to their local TV station. And here I am, somebody who is fresh out of high school, already, seeing the world. And I didn't see that for my peers, and I didn't like that. So what I did was I said, well, you know what? I'll take everybody on this journey with me. So I started a Facebook group, and I would go live at the station. We would do writing tutorials. We would have interviews with news directors, and word just got around and people just started joining.
So once you saw the engagement happening on the Facebook group, what type of tactics did you employ to keep it going?
Honestly, it was just people. Like, there was no strategy, there was no marketing. It was really just people asking questions, being involved. Like, even to this day, like, people always ask, so how do you get people? It was just, I don't know, I guess people, it was jobs, and we were having conversations with news directors. And I wanted people to know that you did not have to fear somebody who you have to report to. Like, this person should be somebody that, you can speak to at any time. So I wanted to really take that bridge and that gap away.
I want to stay on this question about what problem are we trying to solve with the audiences that we are building digitally. So Travell, I asked you the same question. You have many things going on, but let's be specific about your podcast. What type of problems were you trying to solve with the two podcasts that you co-host?
Yeah, well, I'll mainly focus on Fanti, which is a weekly kind of pop culture conversation show that I co-host with Jared Hill, who's also a Black queer journalist, currently president of the LA chapter of NABJ. And I think for us, we were interested in just kind of creating a space where we could have complex and nuanced conversations about various discussion points, whether that's Tyler Perry and the content that he gifts us, right? Or whether that's talking about the difference between, bloggers and journalists, right? And the different expectations therein. And so we really kind of focused in on trying to create that particular space. And with the show, it has been, we launched about a month before the pandemic started. And so we've been building the show and doing the show throughout, via Zoom for ourselves and throughout the pandemic. And I think for us, it has been about, trying to give people kind of an authentic space where you can have some like really rich, intellectual, deep conversations, but, you can get a little ratchet as well at the same time. And so for us, it's been about like leaning into the authenticity of how we come to our jobs as Black queer folks, right? And then kind of creating this broader ecosystem where listeners in particular feel like they can, be part of that discussion. And that's important for us because the network that we're currently on, Maximum Fun, is a listener-supported network, right? So we get paid based on the people, very much like a Patreon model. We get paid based on the people who pledge $5, $10, $30 a month to us. And so part of that, right, has also been about being responsive to the audience, right? What things do they like? What things don't they like? Et cetera, right? As we are kind of continuously crafting the show that we have. And then the second podcast is the Daily News Podcast. It's on the Crooked Media Network. We basically recap, the daily news in 20 to 30 minutes so that you can start your day off with this kind of recap. And I think with that show in particular, for those who aren't familiar, Crooked Media is a fairly, progressive, politically oriented, company. The founders of it are three, former folks who worked in the Obama administration. And the entire network is about kind of being the antidote to, a kind of news ecosystem that rejects, the personalities of folks, and that also can be kind of humdrum. And so with that, we try to basically just do the news in a way that's fun and interesting and keeps people as engaged as possible. For many of us, we've been covering the election, right, that happened yesterday. And so for us, it's about being a show that handles the news, recaps the news, reports on the news, but it's coming from people who you might not expect to be the voices for this. So myself as a non-binary journalist, and then the other three co-hosts are all women of color throughout the country who have various experiences that they kind of bring to the conversation that we have.
And Carlin, I'll toss it to you next. As the deputy editor, what problems are you all trying to solve at your organization to build digital audiences?
Well, for us in my world, the sports world, there's a lot of noise. So there's a ton of competition, and most people are kind of fighting for the same real estate and the same fan base. So we're in a niche within a niche within a niche when we're covering the game of basketball. And for us, it's not only just trying to cut through all that noise, but also figuring out from the US how we can speak to an international audience. I think that's one of the things that we really had to learn from a learning curve perspective. So I was lucky enough to be able to travel to go to some of these countries, but for a lot of the countries that we have, I have no idea. Never stepped foot in Vietnam, never stepped foot in Thailand. So it's kind of trying to understand how we as basketball journalists can speak to the basketball fan without talking down to them. Understanding what level are they in terms of their expertise of the game, because it's very easy to think that everyone's on the same level or same playing field, but until you're in their shoes, you really don't know. So for an example, I'll throw out we have India as one of our markets, and we did an early study when I first started, was 5 years ago, just polling kids that were between the ages of 13 and 18, just finding out, how can they name 5 basketball teams, and they struggled to do just that. They were saying like the Chicago Saints and New Orleans Knicks, and they were just mixing up all the names. They knew the cities, but they were just mixing up all the names. So it's just kind of understanding, all right, well, we have to figure out a way to educate them on that first before we even get to the game. But then there's another portion of the fan base that is really, they have the internet too. They have Wi-Fi in India too. So they have access to all the information that we have access to, and they do have a level of expertise within the game of basketball that we can speak to. So finding that balance and understanding where we can kind of narrow down and talk to that niche audience, and what is the biggest niche audience that we need to speak to kind of gain subscribers that way. And in all those different markets is probably the toughest thing that we had to go through. And, luckily we have a lot of tools at our hands that are able to do that. Google Trends is something that we use without question, and really dive into it. So I've become a big data fan. I'm not a fan of it within basketball, but when it comes to stuff like this, I know you can't really go and really succeed, in my opinion, without really digging into the numbers.
You said a lot of things that stuck out to me just now, and one of them is mixing up the names and the cities of the players and the teams. I do that, and I don't even have an excuse. I'm right here in America, and I still get the names wrong. But you bring up a lot of good points about really understanding your audience and honing in on what their needs are. I know sometimes we make assumptions about what we think our digital audience wants, but we are wrong. So talk to me about how you get away from assumptions and get down to facts of knowing who your audience is. And anyone can take this.
I could start. For us, it's really, one, we were trying to figure out the lane that we wanted to kind of get in. And for us, it was kind of easy because it was basketball related, but I'm trying to make it as broad as possible. You can have one subject or one topic and kind of narrow down and make it as niche as possible in many different ways, so that you're not wasting time creating content that's not going to speak to any audience. It's sort of finding, I brought up Google Trends, but it's sort of finding the type of content that people are looking for within the subject that you are really attacking. And that's sort of where we started. We really started digging into Google Trends. We really started looking at YouTube, and this is for a newsletter. None of those things had anything to do with it, but it was really trying to understand, what are the questions people are asking? What sort of information are people looking for when they're asking those questions? So if you're going to Google and you're asking, when does the NBA season start, that gives me an idea of that's what you want to know. So it's kind of drilling down and figuring out the questions that they were asking. So we were able to do that early, before we even put the newsletter out. I think that's something that most people should do before they start a channel, whether it's a podcast, newsletter, YouTube channel. It's sort of understanding and doing the research so that you're not wasting time creating content and trying to do it on the fly. If you can kind of figure out exactly the lane and the type of content that subscribers are looking for before you put your foot out there and step into the door, then you're already the head of the game, and then you can only learn from there. So I think for us, when we were starting our first couple of newsletters, we did not do that. We did not research. We just kind of jumped head first and just figured, like, based off of our basketball knowledge, we'd be able to figure things out. And what that did was, not only did it take us some time to grow, it really, we had more mistakes than we had successes, because we weren't really, trusting the data and trusting the numbers. We were just going off of feel. And I think a lot of people run into that issue is, you feel like you're passionate about a subject or whatever the case may be, and you think what everybody wants to know, that they might want to know what you want to know. And that's not always the case. There's different things where, I think if you do the research beforehand, you'll probably set yourself up for more success than you would if you just jumped head first and try to figure it out on the fly.
That's really great advice. Even with Unapologetically ATL, we took the approach of making a lot of assumptions in the beginning, and, we were right about some things, but once we implemented surveys into our newsletter to actually figure out the topics that they wanted to hear about, the people they wanted to hear from, that improved our newsletter drastically. Travell, did you do any type of preliminary research when launching podcasts?
Yes and no. I think for us, and I think it is a little different when you're kind of on the independent side of things, and you're not, you don't have to worry about no overlords, looking over, the numbers and whatnot. For us, we knew that just our general listenership, me and Jared's general listenership of podcasts, we knew that there was a space that wasn't there, right? We knew that there were podcasts that were sort of having these conversations, but they didn't have like the journalistic integrity that we bring to the work that we do, or they just didn't have that kind of historical or research-based kind of context in those conversations. So we knew that we kind of wanted to be the space for folks like us who, yes, we want to talk about, the foolishness that the Kardashians are doing, but we also want to talk about it in a broader context of, celebrity and fame and the ways that corrupts many folks. One thing we did do, though, is we have a listener feedback segment of our show. So every episode where we read out an email or a tweet or an Instagram DM from a listener. Topics that we do on the show every week have been inspired by things that the audience themselves have literally said, wonder what your opinion is or your thoughts are on insert topic here. And then because our network is a, member supported network, we started doing, we call them salons, which are these member-only conversation series that we do with the folks who support our show, in which they can, it's an hour once a month where Jared and I hop on Zoom with these folks from across the globe. We've got people dialing in from Egypt, right? And that's their opportunity to give us like direct feedback. And from there, we can take this information and say, what's working, what's not working. I would add to that, social media for us as an independent podcast has also been an interesting tool to be able to tell, we pull out a clip from the show and put it up on Instagram and see what the type of response is just from the public, right? So we've had segments that have done really well on social media that encourage us to keep doing those segments on the show. We've had other things that we thought, would pop that didn't, right? And so maybe we don't, approach the conversation in that way anymore. I think so much of it from an independent kind of content creator standpoint is about being flexible and being responsive to, what these folks who are supporting the work you're doing are saying that they're interested in or not interested in.
And Kamara, I'll toss it to you. What kind of research or data have you gathered or learned from the audience that you've curated on Facebook?
No, I really want to piggyback on what Carlin said, just about what was trending on social media. Twitter, believe it or not, you look on the left-hand side or the right-hand side, and you're like, okay, hashtag this, hashtag that. And you just really find out what people like and what they don't like. It'll be trial and error. I would say this, like anybody who is looking to start something new, just like Travell said, hear it back from your listening audience. You know, they will talk to you and they will tell you what they like and they'll tell you what they don't like. And then you also want to see just about like what's trending online, like globally. That'll give you a really good perspective on what you need to focus on. But that is like the main one. I would just say, just looking at human behavior.
I'll add on to that. It's just I think for me, I can't speak for everyone else, but for me, one of the things that, you know, we tried to do at first with the newsletter was try to give something that was different, that wasn't, you know, already available in certain aspects. And sometimes you just got to play the hits. Like sometimes people just want to hear the hit songs. Like, so you just got to give them what they want. Like maybe you feel like that some, you know, some things are oversaturated, but they're oversaturated for a reason, because people want that content. People want to be able to consume that. They just want it from a different voice, and that different voice makes it different enough. Like your voice is different enough than someone else's. So you're coming at it from a different perspective. And that's the one thing that I think, you know, we as journalists sometimes shy away from. This is like, all right, you know, the story's already told, but you can tell it in your own way. And it will be different enough that someone else will appreciate it. So I think, you know, playing the hits is something that is sort of underrated when we're talking about really building subscribers in any sort of field.
The pull quote that I got from that, your voice is different enough. I really like that. I will be tweeting that out later. That resonated for sure. A lot of times when we're trying to build these new audiences, we're thinking about things that we want to do or new things that we want to try. But what are some of the things that you stopped doing in order to build your audience or to boost engagement?
Stop believing that I knew everything. That's one of the easiest things. You kind of, you know, it goes back to doing the research, but also, you know, as Travell said, that, you know, trusting your audience and polling them to tell you, you know, what you should be giving. Because, you know, one person could have an opinion on something, and that one person could just take their network and create new fans for you with you just kind of sitting in the background and letting them do their thing. And you have no idea, you know, we always look at data, but you can't forget that these are people. You know, just that you can't look at them as numbers. They're really people behind. They have feelings, they have opinions, and they'll definitely tell you about the opinions that they have when you ask them about it. And don't be afraid to ask, and don't be afraid to implement them when you do get that feedback. I think the worst thing you can do is ask for feedback and then don't do anything when you get it. You know, I think a lot of people are in the mindset of asking for feedback, and when they get it, they kind of, maybe they take it the wrong way, or they don't implement it or follow through on things that they said they might bring to the table that people are asking for. So I think if you're going to put yourself out there, and first of all, you should definitely ask for feedback, but also asking for feedback from the right people, not your friends and family that may not be interested, but the people that are, you know, subscribing, because those are the people that are going to be coming back. Friends and family are cool to kind of be there and support you. They're not going to be showing up to every sort of piece of content or consuming every sort of piece of content that you put out there. They might show up once or twice to, you know, to just be, you know, good people, to have your back. But the people that you really want to attract and get good feedback from are the right people. And the right people are your subscribers or potential subscribers. And that's who you should really take into consideration when you're creating content. It does you nothing if you're asking for feedback from wrong people, but also if you're asking for feedback from the right people and then not implementing some of the things that they asked you to improve on.
Did anybody else stop doing something?
I guess I'm sorry. No,
go ahead. Go ahead.
I just say, I guess I took a break. It sounds crazy, but I took a break. It's okay to have brain breaks. Say, listen, hey, I'm going to take some time. I'm going to not be on my phone. I'm going to turn off some notifications for a while, and then I'm going to regroup. But as journalists, as social media content creators, Travell, I mean, she's co-hosting two podcasts. That's a lot of computer time. And in order for you to get all of your juices flowing again, you have to regroup. So it sounds crazy, but just take a break.
I think that's actually a great point, is taking a break. I feel like sometimes I think this applies both to kind of the independent creator side as well as, you know, folks who are working for and representing various institutions, is that sometimes you can just be on that hamster wheel trying to do all of the different things and implementing this and doing this. But sometimes the most generative thing for what you're doing can be taking a step back, taking a vacation, coming back to it in a week or whatever, because it sometimes just allows you to have a different outlook on things. I'll also add that, particularly speaking from the kind of independent content creator space, and this goes back to something Carlin said, is that like one of the things I had to stop doing was like making myself small when it comes to just being an independent creator, being a freelancer, by which I mean, I went to Morehouse for undergrad. I went to Stanford for grad school. I was reared in the traditional way that all of us as journalists are reared, right? Which a lot of it is about like not leaning into the specificity of our experiences. And so when I got laid off in 2019, 2 days before Christmas, and I needed to, lean on myself and the uniqueness of what I bring to this job, it was difficult because of how I was reared. And so I had to stop like allowing, some of those foundational tenets that this industry, that grad school teaches us. I had to stop allowing that to like to light my path forward and chart out some things for my own self, because the industry is changing. More and more of us are, doing our own newsletters or doing some sort of content specifically for Instagram that we get support from Patreon, or we're writing books, right? We're not just in a newsroom anymore. And so I encourage people to lean into whatever the unique thing that you feel like you bring to whatever it is. And it can just be, like Carlin said, the fact that you are a different person saying the things that other people have said. You'll be surprised how many people kind of respond to that.
I love that. I also hear a little therapy in here. I feel like I got some therapy lessons from you all as well. Resting, believing in yourself, believing in your uniqueness. You don't know everything. Sometimes that's a hard truth too. So I appreciate all of those insights. Now I want to talk about what success looks like for everybody. I know newsletters, there are a bunch of different metrics that make sense to you that may be different for podcast or managing a social media group, but how do you determine what success looks like for the digital platforms that you're managing?
I'll start. I'll say for me on the independent side of things, although this is present for me as well when I was in-house, I'm most concerned with impact. I personally do not care about how many people clicking on it, how wide the reach is. There are other people whose job it is to worry about those things. I am not one of them. And so for me, all of my work has been about like, is it impacting the people that I want it to impact? And is it impacting them positively? And for me, I figure that out based on the comment section. I know we say don't read the comment section sometimes, but if you can stand it, wading into that to see how people are responding to the work could be helpful. For me, it's also about in the ongoing reporting that I'm doing, being out in the field and having people just come up and say, "Oh, I listened to the podcast," or when I was at the LA Times, I read this piece that you did and it meant this thing for me or people like me or my community. So impact for me is the main driving factor behind the majority of the work that I do. And, I pay attention to the numbers and all that other stuff, but that's like secondary for me personally.
Carlin, what about you? I want to specifically hear about how you measure newsletter success.
Yeah, I think my boss's response will be different than mine. They're probably a little bit. We're both numbers based, but they're probably more interested about the amount of subscribers. For me, I'm more interested about the engagement. So, we can have 100,000 subscribers, but if only 10 of them are open to the newsletter, then what are we doing? If we have 5,000 subscribers and every single one of them are open to newsletter, that's more successful for me. So, newsletters are one of those things, especially in our sports world, where people sign up for these things and they get them and they kind of read the headlines and don't really engage with it. And our goal is to really have them engage with the newsletter. There's no sense in just sending it to their inbox and them sort of deleting it or putting it aside and ignoring it completely. We want them not only to open it, but just go from top to bottom, as low down to the newsletter as we possibly can, because there's a lot in there. It's not only just articles that we've written, but it's, social media posts. There's polls, there's things that we want them to engage with. So for me, it's engagement. It's the amount of opens, it's the amount, it's how long, it's the amount of, pieces of content that they're engaging within the newsletter that really means success for what we do. But again, like I said, the suits, they probably say, as we have, X amount of subscribers, we can, put that on a spreadsheet or put that in front of a panel or put that on a PowerPoint. It looks better that way. But I think for us, it's really engagement.
And Kamara, what about you? What does success look like for you?
A success just looks like, how many people you've helped. That's one of the things that like people always remember. I like that quote by Maya Angelou. She said, it's not so much, and I'm paraphrasing it, but not so much what you did, but how you made me feel. And that's something that has really stuck with me, ever since I heard that when I was in elementary school. So it's about making sure you just, like Travell said, have impact on people, but help out your brother and sister. They don't have to look like you. They don't have to be like you, but help someone else out. And that's something that I truly live by.
I want to talk more about this word engagement and how we do it. Travell, you brought up something interesting about, and let me know if I'm saying it wrong. Salon, did I get
You're perfect.
I love this idea of taking your audience to other places that are not just the main platform that you began with. So talk to us more about the salon and how you came up with that, and just the success that or the impact, the impact that you've seen with that.
Yeah, with the salon, we basically wanted to give the people who are financially supporting, we call it our Fanti fam, the people who are financially supporting the work that we do, something special, right? Something that you can't get just by, pulling up your podcast app. And we had this idea to just take another hour out of our day, once a month. And we choose a time that works for us as the co-host. And then the listeners, you'll be surprised, they move their schedules around if they need to, because they want to be there. They want to be kind of have that one-on-one or two-on-one experience. And really, I think for us, it was about making sure that they felt like for them paying us and helping us to create this space. And so for us, the salon really is a thank you to the people who are giving us a little bit of their coins. And it's been important because when you are building an audience, particularly an audience where you're asking for their money, right? There has to be a buy-in of some sort. It has to be worth it, particularly over the last couple of years in which, the coin purses all over the place have been a little precarious for many of us, right? And so to be giving $5, $10 a month can be a huge expense for a lot of people, and we recognize that. And so we just wanted to kind of give them something for, supporting the work that we do. And again, it's been very helpful for us, one, to know what the specific impact of our show is. We have people who log into the Zoom and tell us about how, our frank conversations about mental health got them back into therapy, right? Or we've had people talk about how, our reflections on our childhoods in particular, right, helped them, call up their mama and work through some issues, right? Or we've had, people who are also journalists who listen to our show and say that listening to the work that we do allowed them to lean more into their identities and the uniqueness that it brings to their work. And so the salon really it's about taking the audience that we already have just listening to the podcast, particularly the ones who are financially contributing to the work that we do, and giving them some added benefit, for their support of our show. Soon we'll be doing, more live shows and other in-person activations to kind of further build and cultivate and reward that community and that family that we feel like we've built. But right now, the salon kind of takes that place.
And I know you have paying customers or paying audiences, which is great. What about our free audiences who are engaged digitally? Are there any incentives that you all have given folks who don't pay a dime, but just love to see you in their inbox or love to hear you on the Facebook group?
I think for us, it's trying to create an exclusive experience. And I think a lot of the times we forget when we're trying to create content what that looks like on the other end as a user. So, everybody kind of wants something in return, whether they're getting it for free or not, or paying for a service or not. But in the free world, you kind of want an exclusive experience. You want a reason to subscribe to a newsletter. So for us specifically, a lot of the articles that we produce may not end up on the website. They might just be a newsletter exclusive. So that's one of the ways that, we kind of cater to that audience, or we'll run a sweepstakes, that has an opportunity for them to maybe, fly to All-Star and be a part of that. That's only, targeted to our newsletter audience. So there's different ways to kind of create exclusive content that's delivered to them that wouldn't only get them to subscribe, but to also interact with the newsletter, and something that's different than what you present on your everyday website, which is in our case, just the daily NBA news or what's happening in the NBA world. So it's sort of kind of creating that exclusive experience. But I really love what Travell said is also trying to create that community feel, because that's one of the things that really kind of adds to subscriber bases is really not only the interaction with the person that's creating content, but amongst each other. Like you find people from different walks of life that you connect with, and all of a sudden they could be your neighbor digitally, but maybe even in real life, and you create friendships and bonds that way. So the community feel, I know that wasn't a part of the question, but I did want to just jump on that because I thought that was well said, and something that people forget about when you're kind of thinking about subscriber bases.
And I wanted to add to what you said about the sweepstakes. With Unapologetically, we have experimented with contest giveaways. Towards the end of last year, we gave away Falcons tickets to help boost subscriptions and signups. And, the Braves tickets might have been more popular at the time because we were about to win the World Series and the Falcons weren't doing that great. But like you said, just having those incentives, what can I get when I sign up for this newsletter? What's in it for me, aside from a bunch of clicks or, a bunch of people that I'm just starting to get to know? So I love what you said about giveaways. Kamar, are there any other thoughts about how we give things to our audience for free?
I really like what Travell and Carlin talked about, the experience. And it's really just making a space for everybody to feel comfortable. That's one of the things that, I enjoy, with DCOW. I make sure that anybody can join. There are people who are literally have disabilities in there, but you still can have a chance. That does not discount you for any reason on being a journalist and going out and getting the news in any shape or form. So I would say just making a community and making a space where people know that they are feeling and knowing that they're being heard, and then that they can also, get feedback if they have a question.
We do have a couple of questions from our audience members. So I want to remind folks that if you do have a question, please drop it in the Q&A box and we will get to it. So I would like to start with this question we have. It says, the digital space can be overwhelming. What are the top 3 things you suggest focusing on if social and digital marketing is just one of many responsibilities you have? How to make it manageable?
Sounds like we're saying that we're all doomed, that there's not really anything that we can do to help. It's a great question. I think I lost it. I think one of the things that we can do is kind of prioritize where you're getting the most engagement. and focusing there first, putting some energy there first, and then taking the learnings from the success stories that you're getting in one area. So whether that's, if it's social, then focusing on the success stories that you're having there and trying to transform that engagement to the other areas. So that would be, one of the things that I would focus on, because a lot of the times when you do have, I'm calling them subscribers because that's the name of the webinar here, but a lot of times when you do have people that follow you in one area, they tend to kind of follow you in multiple areas. As long as you kind of lead them around the right path, and they want to see your success story, because a lot of the times they come for the brand, but they stay for you. They stay for the people that are creating the content. So I think that's one of the things to really understand. I know we all are humble, and most people don't know, want to and acknowledge that, but even in our world where most people are coming for the NBA brand, like they are staying for the writers that are writing the stories, because it's their voices that they've come familiar with and kind of learned different things from. They're not necessarily, once they've got there, staying for the NBA anymore. They're staying for the people that are creating the content. So and sometimes in a lot of cases they're coming for your brand, but they're staying for you as the person. So it's important to understand that. And I think if you focus on the one area that has a success, and be able to transfer rather some of the learnings that you had from that one area, that's probably the best way to do it, instead of just juggling a bunch of balls in the air and hoping that you could catch them all at the same time.
That's really good. I'd like to add to that. I was stumped in the beginning because I'm like, I don't know, how to manage all of the things. But you make a good point about just focusing on what you do great at. So one of the things that the AJC experimented with was adding more voice and personality to our newsletters. Initially, a lot of our newsletters just had a bunch of links that would take you directly back to the website. You never really heard a personal touch from any of our news reporters. So I'll take sports, for example. Our sports daily newsletter followed the link-heavy format. Then we decided to add Mark Bradley, who is a columnist here, who's known for his work. We asked him to start contributing to the newsletter and breaking down some of the games and what his thoughts were on it. And once we did a survey about the switch in the newsletter, people really enjoyed hearing somebody's personal voice guiding them through the news stories of the day. So now we're trying to add more voice to other newsletters as well. So I love what you said about that.
I just add that I think also when it comes to digital things, period, we often feel like we have to do it all. Like we feel like you got to have 10 posts a day on Instagram or 10 posts a day on Twitter or TikTok or whatever the case may be. And sometimes making it more manageable is just saying, okay, what do I have time for in my day? I only have time for in my day to do one social media post. Again, I'm coming from the independent creator side of things. I only have time to do one social media post. Okay, then I'm going to do that one social media post. I'm going to make sure that it's a great social media post, that I put all my energy into it, right? And then allow that to be what it is, and then focus elsewhere however I need to focus, right? And so I feel like sometimes we feel like we just have to do everything. And to Carlin's point, like that's not necessarily the case. Like in prioritizing what's already working, if you also can prioritize, hey, I only have enough time to do this thing, maybe that's one particular route to trying to figure out how to make these things more manageable. And I think also something that folks often, talk about is like, what are the things that you can automate in your process that make it more manageable, right? And so is that figuring out a way to, is it scheduling tweets, right? Is it you can schedule other social media posts these days now as well, right? Is it, I will also note that sometimes we just need to hire somebody. Sometimes we just need to add to the team. And I know institutions, it's hard to do that sometimes, the budget be tight. But sometimes that is the only solve, right, for already strapped teams. And so that's another thing I will just add.
Naja, did you see that question? I think that's a great question somebody just asked.
What if you have more than one audience that correlate with each other? Is that the one?
No,
Not that one?
the
Let me
one from Jade Harrell.
read it out for us.
She said, "Are we leaving Twitter?"
Ooh.
That's a great discussion, girl. I don't know.
Open that up to the floor. Are we leaving Twitter? Is your blue check going away? Are you paying for a blue check? So many questions.
I'm not leaving Twitter, not yet at least. I think that so many, and I say this as an independent creator, right? Like so many opportunities as a freelancer have come to me because of Twitter, right? An editor is able to access me in what they believe is an easier way. They're able to find my various musings or reporting about a variety of different issues. I literally got DM'd by an editor today on Twitter and commissioned for to write a cover story. And so it's a useful tool, and it continues to be a useful tool, particularly for folks who are doing work that services, specific, typically more marginalized communities, right? Twitter can be a great way to find that community and tap into that. I'm not paying for the blue check that I currently have, and so if she goes away, oh well. But I think that we are in a moment where we're going to see how that platform changes, in particular, how the changes to that platform impact news entities, because of what we all know to be the ways that social media, we can also include the changes that are happening over at, Facebook and Meta as well, right? These are social media platforms that have been very integral to a lot of newsrooms, reaching the audiences that they want to reach. And so I think things are definitely going to change, and it'll be up to us to respond, in kind to that as it happens.
Yeah, I can say this, and Allison Joyner, I answered your question, sorry, in like the QA, but I'll say it here. But question is, are we leaving Twitter personally? No. And the reason why is because it's still a very large, one of our big three social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. They reach a large amount of people. In terms of like the blue check mark, from a business standpoint, I do see things like, revenue generators. I would be somebody who would pay, and I would pay it annually to get it out of the way. So it's not something that's coming out $8 a month. I know, and everybody has a different opinion on that, and that is okay. The nitty gritty gets to, stations and then television groups, if groups want to pay, and how does that work? And how long does that last? But I would tell you from a content creator and from a journalist standpoint, if this is a way, especially like during 2020, during George Floyd, a lot of that real news that we saw, because of the algorithm on Facebook, some of us would have saw that 3 or 4 hours later, but because of Twitter, we saw it updated in real time. And that's one of the things that I can appreciate. So no, I won't. Harlan, what about you?
I'm not leaving Twitter until there's a reputable, alternate that we can all, depend on and believe in, that has the same sort of functionality that Twitter brings to the table. But I'll also say, like, Twitter, I don't know how long many of you guys have been on it, or how long some of the attendees have been on it, but it's changed over the years. And honestly, at the end of the day, it's the people adapt to the changes that they've been able to see. And when Twitter started, it wasn't what it is now. It's the people that kind of made it what it is now. And I'll trust that the people that are on it, that are using it for good anyway, are going to adapt to the new changes that are in place. And who knows what they really truly are? Who knows what we only know what they're telling us at this time. So it is going to change. But I do trust that we as journalists, and I think the people that are on Twitter for the good, are going to figure out a way to adapt to the changes that are coming. And if there's not a suitable alternate replacement, then I guess I'm going to be there with everybody else.
Speaking of social media, we have a question about Facebook, not Twitter this time. And the question says, I have a quick basic question for the panel. Facebook profiles are a critical marketing piece at my TV station. I post plenty of stories that we cover locally in a news day, as well as national and international news. Other than 1,000 selfies, what other ideas do you think might help cut through and build more audience, all while dealing with the time constraints that we have as journos?
I want to make sure I'm hearing the question correctly. So what are they asking? Is this saying what content are we supposed to post on Facebook to drive?
Yeah, I'm gathering, aside from pictures and links, what else can you post on Facebook to help boost engagement?
Oh, that's a good question. I would say maybe videos. TikTok changed the game. So a lot of us are going to that IG reel, but Facebook isn't like a short form video. One of the things, what is this? One of the things that I would definitely say, Troy, is find out like what the audience is looking for. Carlin talked about that, like what do they want to see? And then based on that, then you'll post. So that might be videos, but that's the only thing that I can pull from that question.
I would oh, go ahead, Carlin. I would ask for you to think about yourself is like, how else are you using the page, right? Are you just posting what you're posting? Are you interacting with your comment section on that Facebook profile? Right? Because like, I think what I'm getting from this question is someone who perhaps is not interested in leaning into the personality, like doesn't want to post a bunch of photos of their life, right? And that's real. And so I would wonder, like, how else can you just build community on that page? And for me, I think about the comment section. If people are commenting on the work that you are posting, right? Are you hop in really quick, take 10 minutes, out of your day, hop onto that Facebook profile and see what the comment section is like. Thank you so much for commenting. Thank you for reading. I find that a lot of times, I used to be editor-at-large at Extra Magazine, which is a Toronto-based LGBTQ outlet. And one of the things that we found great success with, particularly on Facebook, was we would only ever have, 3 comments or something like that on our Facebook page, even though the engagement was, drastically more than that. But we would just hop into the comment section. Our social media editor would hop into the comment section once every day, just say, thank you so much for reading, or thanks so much for your reflection. And I think that began building, some sort of community on that page beyond just whatever, the stories that we were posting. So I would add that as a suggestion.
I'll just quickly add, yeah, it can't, the page can't be a link dump or anything like that. It has to feel like there is a person behind the page, and that doesn't just have to be posting selfies. It could just be polls. It could be graphics, quote graphics. It could be different things rather than just link dumps. Sharing other people's stories, whether from the station or I don't know if company policy agrees with this, but like competitors, that might even help. But if it's just a link dump, it's really going to be hard for Facebook to kind of push that to the forefront and get that in front of more people, if that makes sense.
And I want to make sure I don't leave out Miss Allison Joyner, who also has a question. What if you have more than one audience? How do you cater to them both? Does the strategy change based on catering to several different audiences?
I don't think the strategy changes, but I think I think you sort of have to leave them on separate islands, if that makes sense. There is going to be a Venn diagram where some of the audience fits in the middle, but for the most part, when you're creating a subscriber base, most people are coming to you for one thing and that one thing only. So if you have a cooking podcast and then all of a sudden you throw in an episode about a chef that passed away or a chef that got killed, that then becomes a true crime podcast, and it's no longer what they were coming to the table for, even though it's about a chef. So I think you have to be very careful when you're trying to I guess, bring them together. Again, there's going to be a Venn diagram where in the middle, people are coming for your content and they're coming for you. So don't matter what you do. You could be doing the cooking podcast or the true crime podcast. They're coming for whatever you bring to the table. But for the most part, most subscribers are coming for that one singular thing. So you kind of have to stay in that lane, so to speak.
Yeah, I just add, the daily news podcast that I do, I imagine that the majority of people who are listening to that podcast are not also listening to me at Fanti. I know that there are some people who do both, right? Who were listening to Fanti, and then when I started the Daily News podcast, they migrated over there, and people from the Daily News podcast who have migrated to the personal podcast. But I agree with Carlin. I think that they are going to be different audiences, and they require different approaches because they have different needs. And I think that's just something that we do. I know for me, again, like as a personality of sorts, for me, I just try to stay true to who I am, no matter the space that I am in, so that if you are coming to me for Fanti, you're going to get me. And then also, if you're coming to me through this daily news podcast, you're also going to get me in that particular context, right? And so for me, it's about just like maintaining that authenticity, despite whoever the target audience I might be trying to cater to is. And I think that's been helpful for me.
So we have about 5 minutes left, and I want to give our panelists an opportunity to say one more thing. If you have any closing remarks that you want to leave us with, or any pieces of advice that you want to leave us with, just take about a minute, each of you, to say what that is.
Definitely. And I want to just say, just special thanks to Tre'vell. My first time meeting you, it was a pleasure to be on this panel with you. And then Carlin, we talk about once a month. And then Naja, thank you for moderating. But I want to say to everybody, I'm really glad to see what you're going to create. I know that you are like top journalists. That's why you are here. And if you have any questions, I already see some of y'all are tagging us on Twitter and Instagram. So feel free. I'm not shy, so I will get back with you. And yeah, if you have any questions, just let me know and I'm happy to help.
I'll echo same sentiments. If there's anything that I could do to help in any way, shape, or form, you can follow me on Twitter. I'll also leave my email in the chat box here when we're done. I think one of the 5 things that I want to get across is, one, when you're thinking about trying to create a subscriber base, you make sure you want to set up properly. Kind of think of things as your welcome mat. You don't want people guessing as to what you're presenting to them. Is your title clear and concise? If you're a cooking show, is it cooking related? Not something that they have to guess what it is. The second thing is to kind of do your research, know what you're getting into, know the content that you want to create before you even start up. Third, engage, man. Engage. That's one way to really create a community in a fast way, is be a real person and treat others like a real person rather than just a data point. And then think about their experience. We are creating content, but we're also users in different lanes. There's something from your experience being a fan or a subscriber to something that you like. Try to implement that into your world. And then the last thing is be consistent. The worst thing out is to start something, whether it's a newsletter, a podcast, YouTube channel, whatever, and you start on every Monday, and all of a sudden, because it's more convenient for you, you start posting stuff on a Thursday. That is absolutely the worst thing that you could possibly do. So I think if we all start with those 5 things and then being ourselves, and the rest is history. We'll find the people that we're looking to find.
+1 to everything he said. Absolutely. Also want to give a shout out to the NABJ staff behind the scenes making this happen. Veronique, Vanessa, Sharon, Angela, Kanya. Shout out to y'all.
Thank y'all so much for joining our panel and spending your evening or your afternoon, wherever you are. Thank you for spending a little bit of time with us on today. I'm going to toss it back to Joseph, who's going to close us out. Thanks, everybody.
Awesome. Thank you to our panelists. My goal as your chair is to just like create some stuff that I would like to see, but also have this be your chair too. Like, I want everyone to be involved, that interaction, that engagement, word of the night. So I've asked our hosts to put the link to our email list and our Facebook page. They're both in there. Please come and get involved. Even if you just want to like check out what we're doing, we're going for an event once every month, once every 2 months. So we're trying to stay nimble, but thank you to our panelists. Thank you to everyone who showed up. And yeah, thanks for coming, guys.